The views and opinions expressed on KLZ 560 are those of the speaker, commentators, hosts, their guests, and callers. They are not necessarily the views and opinions of Crawford Broadcasting or KLZ management, employees, associates, or advertisers. KLZ 560 is a Crawford Broadcasting God and Country station.
It's the Kim Monson Show, analyzing the most important stories.
The socialization of transportation, education, energy, housing, and water, what it means is that government controls it through rules and regulations.
The latest in politics and world affairs.
Under this guise of bipartisanship and nonpartisanship, it's actually tapping down the truth.
Today's current opinions and ideas.
On an equal field in the battle of ideas, mistruths and misconceptions is getting us into a world of hurt.
Is it freedom or is it force? Let's have a conversation.
And welcome to the Kim Monson Show. Be sure and check out our website. That is kimmonson.com. Sign up for our weekly email newsletter. You'll get first look at our upcoming guests as well as our most recent essays. Thank you to all of you who support us. We are an independent voice. We search for truth and clarity by looking at these issues through the lens of freedom versus force, force versus freedom. If something's a good idea, you should not have to force people to do it. And you can email me at kim@kimmonson.com. And I so appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening. You're each treasured. You're valued. You have purpose. Today, strive for excellence. Take care of your heart, your soul, your mind, and your body. My friends, we were made for this moment. And thank you to the team I work with. That's producer Joe, producer Luke, Zach, Echo, Charlie, all the people here at Crawford Broadcasting. It's just a great team that I get to work with. And we have pre-recorded the shows for Labor Day. And very pleased to have in studio with me my friend, business professor Kurt Gerwitz. It's great to have you here.
It's a beautiful day, Kim. Thanks for having me.
It's and you and I will be going over to the Hooters Restaurants, which is one of my sponsors, for lunch here, which is becoming a monthly occurrence. We're partaking in their lunch specials.
And I'm getting stuck in a rut. I always order the same thing. I get those fish tacos. So if you're listening, Hooters, I will be there in an hour and a half from now, and I will be eating the fish tacos happily.
Absolutely. So they've been great sponsors of the show for quite some time. And how I met them, it's a really important story about freedom and free markets and capitalism bumping up against those PBIs, those politicians, bureaucrats, and interested parties. So again, very excited about that, and we'll be headed there for lunch in just a few moments. And Kurt, we're talking about labor, management, the American idea. As a business professor, where would you want to start regarding labor and management?
You know, as a business professor and somebody who wants to talk about the financial markets in general, we're all on Fed watch these days. We can't keep our eyes off of Jerome Powell. If he's going to raise rates and continue to tighten the screws on the economy because he's concerned about inflation, I say it every time I'm on the air, inflation is a civilization killer. The fall of the Romans, the rise of Hitler, we tie these things to inflation, and so the Fed does not care at all about, well, I shouldn't say at all, but they're trying to create a recession because they want to solve inflation. And the reason it comes up with labor, though, is that the Fed has a dual mandate. They are concerned themselves with, they call it price stability, and that's what they mean by inflation. The other one is unemployment. So they think they have this tool of raising the price of money, which is the interest rate in the economy, and they tighten it or they loosen it, looking at those two metrics.
Who made them God?
They did. J.P. Morgan did at Jekyll Island in the early 1900s. They are. You know, there's a philosophical conversation to be had here about that they are non-governmental. Mm-hmm. You know, we really like that they are not subject to the whims of politics.
Right. You had that in air quotes.
When we see it in other countries, when you get a president who can exert pressure on their central bank, we don't trust those countries. I don't want to invest in those countries because they're going to do something that politicians are, you know, they'll do short-term thinking to a really.
But I think they are on short-term thinking. When Janet Yellen said that this inflation was transitory. Now, she's supposed to know what she's talking about. I knew that she was wrong when she said it.
Yeah, you called that one right. I mean, look, they're doing the best they can. They are our smartest economists, and it speaks to
really,
yeah, it speaks to either the complexity of economics. I heard this. Eric Weinstein said, if economists were good at their job, good at predicting things and understanding the world, then they would be highly paid. But instead, they're in schools begging for scraps to get money. Economists are generally, I love them in my heart, but they're bad at their job. They're bad at predicting things. They're bad at understanding human behavior, and they're doing but they're the best that we've got. And she's up there. She said it was transitory because she thought it was tied to the supply chain problems caused by COVID, and as you point out, caused by the reaction to COVID. But it was really this disastrous for the economy's supply problems. Well, so to fix the inflation, you want to match supply to demand. Well, if supply is constrained, what they're trying to do is they're trying to constrain demand. They're tightening the economy in order to lower demand, meaning lower the economy. But if they bring it down to match supply with the supply constraints, we got a real problem. We don't want to be down there.
No, we don't. And the thing that is so frustrating for me, Kurt Gerwitz, is when they talk about creating unemployment, this is people's lives. This is people being able to buy their groceries, to be able to stay in their homes, to live. And they don't seem to see that this is people. It's not just numbers.
And you should hear how they coax it in language. I mean, it's not as bad as the military that would call it collateral damage. No, I take it back. It is as bad as the military that calls, civilian death like collateral damages, or externalities is some of this vocabulary. And I'm on the spot on the air, so I'm not thinking of all the words they use. But you're right. Like they hide behind numbers, the unemployment rate and the economy itself. When we talk about hurting the economy, when we do go into a recession, suicides will go up, deaths of despair will go up, opium addiction will go up. Like we suffer as a people when the economy hurts, and they think they're trading short term for long term. Long term is we have to stop inflation. Inflation is a civilization killer. This is the belief.
But Milton Friedman said that inflation, and I'm paraphrasing, is caused by government policy.
Yeah, he said it's 100% of the time a monetary circumstance, a monetary phenomenon, meaning that it's how we print money. And we print money when we spend money. Last month I was on here and we were talking about these huge numbers. We played a fun game about that 1 second. A million seconds was 12 days, and a trillion seconds was 31,000 years. And I've got another one for us with pennies and how high they are, and we'll do that in a second. But yeah,
they look at this just as numbers, and they have created this inflation with this printing of all of this money. And last week, Kurt, I was, a couple of things. We have seen the federal government dole out money that they had printed now out to these different municipalities and counties, and then these county commissioners and city council people and mayors, they then are granting this money out to those whom they choose. And there is something wrong with that. That is, first of all, not the proper role of government. And then another headline that I saw just recently was that almost $1 billion is coming to Colorado from the federal government for a government-run broadband. And what could go wrong with the government running broadband? And I know that this seemed like a bit of a tin hat, but a government that PBIs, I'll call them PBIs, that decided during the COVID reaction which businesses were essential and which weren't. Could you see a government-run broadband that would determine which voices can be out there and which can't? I know that sounds wild, but I never dreamed we'd see what we saw during the reaction to COVID.
I remember having a strong opinion, I don't know how many years ago, let's call it 10, maybe 15 years ago, that the internet, it's okay if they're trying to spy on us on the internet because there's just too much content. They'll never sort through it all, or it would be too much work for them to capture it all or to try to monitor it all. And then Edward Snowden explained, he really cracked open these PBIs, what they really want is control. And money itself is a whole system of control. We can get into that. But someone came out and said they work for AT&T, and there's two pipes. And there's the pipe that goes through AT&T, and then they just duplicate the whole thing, and it goes into a warehouse. And one of the libertarian,
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, and they're just, and it's not even a secret anymore. And this, we were talking off the air about, Gen Z is coming up, and the millennials, the generation right behind me, or maybe I'm an older one of them. Not actually, it's a whole thing, but they sort of live in a post-privacy mindset that there's just, of course everything's public all the time, and I don't think they have the wisdom to see how that will and can be used against them. And there was a senator, I want to say it was Ron Paul or maybe Rand Paul, and they said we have to turn off the water to the Nevada data collection center. This is how we have to starve the beast and stop the government from its collection of data. And it's not even, and it's true that they can't look at it all at once. But I've got my eyes on AI. It's my it's my primary focus right now. And with AI, one of the use cases that I love, and I'm trying to convince you that there's both good and bad to this. The use cases of you have 1,000 reviews on Amazon, you can ask AI to summarize it for you. That's a good use case. But it'll do the same with tell me who's risky in society, and it'll give us we're going to have a social credit score. It's terrifying.
Oh, it is totally terrifying. I am talking with Professor Kurt Gerwitz, and I get to do this because I have a lot of really great sponsors. And I'm talking with Roger Mangan. He has a State Farm insurance agency, has been in business for 47 years, strives for excellence, has taken care of his family and his clients and his community. Roger, first of all, thank you for your valued partnership of the show.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad to be here and to help inform the insuring public of what is going on out there in the insurance world.
Well, let's talk about Colorado and hailstorms.
Yes, this is the season for sure. One of the things I think listeners should be knowledgeable about or pique their interest in is how claims are looked at by insurance companies. It's important, I think it's important to understand the perspective of your insurance company so you know how to protect your rates, your coverage, and your renewal status. So here goes. Eventually, you as an insured will be confronted with the question, should I file a claim? The key word impacting the answer to this question is your frequency. How many claims have you had in the last 5 years, the last 10 years? As you can imagine, the insurance industry relies heavily on statistical analysis. Too much frequency or having too many claims can result in a non-renewing position on your policy. They can't cancel your policy midterm, but they can choose to non-renew your contract on the anniversary date if your frequency is too high. So let's quantify that a little bit. Frequency, 17 years and 29 years. So here's a stat. The average State Farm homeowner files a claim once every 17 years. That includes catastrophic claims. Catastrophic claims are hail claims. If there's 500 or more claims, the insurance company declares a catastrophic loss. A non-cat claim could be frozen water pipes, kitchen fire, smaller claims that occur outside of catastrophic losses. A State Farm policyholder has a catastrophic claim once every non-catastrophic claim, every 29 years. So if you're having a lot of claims, chances are you're under the microscope. For example, 2 or 3 claims in 3 years or 3 claims in 10 years, you are viewed as driving homeowners' premiums to be higher for those who don't have that kind of frequency. So if frequency doesn't matter to an insurance company, why are they? It does matter. So they're concerned about it. If there wasn't high frequency, your rates could be 50% lower than they already are. But people with high frequencies are looked at as driving the rates for everybody else. So you're looked at differently, for sure. Kim, I know you've mentioned before in your show, when you have a claim, call your agent first. Unless it's a life and death matter, don't call the 800 number. Don't leave a message after hours. If you do, and the corporate folks take the claim, it becomes a registered claim, possibly a non-paid claim. When it's under your deductible or later you find out it isn't a covered loss. These claims, even though no payment has been made, negatively impact your frequency. Hail claims are a good example of this. Just because your neighbor is getting a new roof doesn't mean you need a new roof. Another one we have had recently that isn't covered is underground water or groundwater entering your basement through seepage, not a covered loss. So my advice to the listener is call your agent, get some coaching. He or she will give you the help you want and you deserve. As you can imagine, the upward pressure on rates is driven by inflation and increased property values. Thanks for letting me share this perspective. My word, again, of advice would be to the listener, call your agent before your renewal. Review your coverages, your deductible, your endorsements. Make sure there are no gaps and that you have adequate coverage, not too much, not too little.
And Roger, what's the best way for people to reach you and your team for a complimentary appointment?
You can call us at 303-795-8855.
And that is the Roger Mangan State Farm Insurance Team, 303-795-8855. Like a good neighbor, the Roger Mangan team is there.
Award-winning realtor Karen Levine with RE/MAX Alliance understands the importance of home ownership. Karen Levine works tirelessly at the local, county, state, and national levels to protect your private property rights. With nearly 30 years' experience as a Colorado realtor, Karen Levine will help you navigate the complicated metro real estate market, whether you're buying your home, selling your home, considering a new build, or exploring investment properties. Kim Monson highly recommends Karen Levine. Call Karen Levine at 303-877-7516. That's 303-877-7516 for answers to all your real estate needs.
You'd like to get in touch with one of the sponsors of The Kim Monson Show, but you can't remember their phone contact or website information. Find a full list of advertising partners on Kim's website, kimmonson.com. That's Kim, MONSON.com.
And welcome back to the Kim Monson Show. Be sure and check out our website. That is Kim Monson, MONSON.com. Sign up for our weekly email newsletter. And you can email me at kim@kimmonson.com as well. Thank you to all of you who support us. We're an independent voice, and we search for truth and clarity by looking at these issues through the lens of freedom versus force, force versus freedom. If something's a good idea, you should not have to force people to do it. And wanted to mention Grand Lake U.S. Constitution Week. It is September 11th through the 17th up in beautiful Grand Lake, Colorado. And it is amazing what this little community does. This is their 12th annual celebration of the Constitution. Constitution Day is on September 17th. The keynote speaker on Saturday is Dr. Carol Swain. And I will be up there on Saturday emceeing the event. I think this is my 9th year. But they're going to have a flyover and a Dot Cero concert. And it's just going to be a great day. But you can find all of the speakers and all of the events by going to GrandLakeUSConstitutionWeek.com. That's GrandLakeUSConstitutionWeek.com. Thursday evening in particular, as you know, one of the nonprofits that I dearly love is the Center for American Values, which is located right here in Pueblo, Colorado. It's on the beautiful Riverwalk. And the co-founders are Drew Dix, who is a Medal of Honor recipient, and Brad Padula, who is an Emmy Award-winning documentary film producer. And the two of them came together and said, we need to do some things. We need to remember the stories and honor our Medal of Honor recipients. And then we need to take the spirit of honor, integrity, and patriotism and teach it to ourselves and teach it to our children. And so you can get more information by going to AmericanValueCenter.org. That's AmericanValueCenter.org. But Drew Dix on Thursday night up at Grand Lake will be the keynote speaker, and he'll be talking about the warrior and our Constitution. And so you can get, again, all that information at GrandLakeUSConstitutionWeek.com. In studio with me is Kurt Gerwitz. We have pre-recorded this for Labor Day. And Kurt, a little bit more about inflation. My father sat me down as a kid. I mean, he would taught me all kinds of things, but he explained inflation. And he also explained how inflation can be detrimental to saving, because if people think that something is going to be more expensive in the future, then they many times will spend money on it now instead of saving for the future. The other thing is inflation is a hidden tax. So in the political spectrum, when politicians say, oh, that party or that party is going to take away your Social Security, well, one of the ways that they do take away your Social Security is by devaluing the value of your Social Security, so you can only buy less. And so it's this hidden attack upon Social Security, and that hidden tax is actually induced by government. So what's your thoughts on all that?
It's induced by government, and then they punish us for it.
How so?
So inflation comes from, there's a couple different places it comes from, but it comes from its monetary policy. It's the printing of money, and we've been doing it since 2000, since the Great Financial Crisis, so 2008 or 9 when we started, or 10 when we started. And we've been printing money like crazy, and we didn't understand, why is there no inflation? We went 10 years with no inflation, despite the fact that we were running the printing machine like crazy. And part of my argument for that was that every other country was doing it too, and so you had currency parity is what you had. Like all the other currencies are doing the exact same thing. But it was also, so what happened was then in the pandemic, when the government spending, when it became fiscal policy, not just monetary policy, I would also argue that the inflation was there. The inflation was in the stock market and in housing. It was in big assets. It was in the wealthy class. They were actually appreciating their assets. And then so now here we are, like, okay, so inflation's shown up. It surprised us. It scared us, and we are reacting to that right now. And we're doing everything we can to have a recession. And it
when
looks
we say
like
you mean the PBIs, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean the Fed. The Fed. It is a group of non-political actors, and we can, I think that's a
or
fun.
Non-elected or non.
Yes. I'm gonna stick by my guns here and say they're non-political. I'll just take that side of the argument with you, Kim, because every other country that has a political person there, like they'll listen to the president. And look, I heard it when the Fed chair was under Trump, and Trump wanted some things done, and he said them out loud, and then the Fed chair did those things, and I stood on my soapbox and said, no, she's not, I think it was Yellen, she's not taking orders, she's doing the thing because it's the right thing to do. And Trump also happened to have said to do that thing that he wanted, and it's important that we have that sort of faith in them, that they're above the politicians. But when we got the Democrats in to spend, to get our debt up to $26.5 trillion, and with a deficit continuing, this one bothers me. I get triggered. $1.6 trillion a year deficit. That's insane. If that was like, $500 billion a few years ago, if that was cut by down to 30%, cut by 60%, down to a 30%, we would have said, no, it's way too much money. And we knew it then, and somehow and it was because of the printing that worked in the last 10 years. It didn't bother us, and now it's all coming to get us. And when I say they're going to hurt us with it, that's what they're doing. Like no one can move their houses anymore because you can't afford the next mortgage. So we're going to destroy the housing. The housing industry is going to get hurt. Mortgages are at all-time high, up in the 7%.
Not all time, but in our recent history.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's a good point too, because my parents and you perhaps lived through the 80s when you saw 13%, and here I am, crying chicken little when our rates are up in the 5.5s.
But they kept those rates artificially low for quite some time because supposedly there was no inflation, right?
We weren't seeing it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think there was inflation in the stock market and in the housing market, so the big asset market, but not in consumer prices. Like, inflation's measured on the things we buy. It's a basket of goods. It's the and they like to look at ones where they call it core PCE inflation. So core headline inflation is the same word, and they mean they've taken out energy and food because those are volatile. Energy and food move up and down a lot.
But those are two things that people need.
Oh yeah, no,
core.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, this speaks to having, look, this is what this is the work I do in my life, and it's about having the right dashboard. And so our overlords who are making these decisions, they're looking at more than just core PCE. They're looking at the one that does include the food and energy. Also, they're looking at that inflation rate, and they're looking at, you have to look at things together. Like today's Labor Day, or we're broadcasting this on the week of Labor Day. And when we look at just unemployment, unemployment is the measure of people looking for a job. Well, when people give up looking for a job, the unemployment rate goes down. So if you're completely desperate, then your metric looks good. Isn't
that weird?
It is what it is, and it's just the nature of of measuring these things. And so you have to also look at the labor participation rate, like how many people, of working age who are not institutionalized, which includes the military. I thought it was funny that the list of what institutionalized means. It's prisons, nursing homes, mental health facilities, or military. And wow. So those people aren't included in the labor participation rate, but you have to look at the labor participation rate in conjunction with the unemployment rate, because because by itself it has that terrible, propensity to be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so then we get the headlines, and for example, regarding the unemployment rate. And so regular people don't understand, or not the unemployment, the inflation rate. So it's really it's kind of disingenuous, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's an oversimplification, right? Like, Einstein said, the simplicity on this side of complexity is worthless. I would give nothing for that. But for the simplicity on the other side of complexity, I would give everything. It's like E equals MC squared is a beautiful formula, and it's true, and it took hundreds of years of thinking to get to it, and that's the simplicity on the other side. Well, we're not in that situation. We're in a situation where we need to get into the complexity and have some humility about what these inflation numbers mean. And so, if I'm giving advice to to our listeners, it's know your own inflation rate, because if your cost of living has gone up, everybody's has. We should be budgeting, and we need help. You need a partner. You need somebody to have the conversation with. Like, what of my expenses are going up and what's getting out of control? For me personally, I have an adjustable rate mortgage that's coming up but I have a few more years. So if I had to refi my mortgage right now, I'd go from my 3% number to a 7% number, and that would more than double my expense, my and the percentage of my budget that is. And so, look, food and energy are volatile, so be a smart shopper. Mm-hmm. And we're all doing the best we can, but yeah, we're not being treated well by the elites at the top who are making decisions on these things.
Not at all, and they don't really feel inflation like we do. So I'm talking with Professor Kurt Gerwitz, and we're talking about labor. We pre-recorded this show, and we get to do this because of great sponsors, and one of those is Johnny Stubbs Heating and Air Conditioning Services.
It's Colorado. We want warm homes in the winter and cool, comfortable homes in the summer. Johnny Stubbs Services is the heating and air conditioning company to call to ensure that your heating and cooling systems run efficiently and last for years. Johnny Stubbs Services' team of experts provide proper guidance to help you make informed decisions about your heating and cooling needs. Kim Monson highly recommends Johnny Stubbs Services. Schedule your air conditioning check before summer arrives at JohnnyStubbsServices.com and receive a great gift. That's JohnnyStubbsServices.com.
Knowledge is power. A reverse mortgage can be an important financial tool for individuals 62 and older. It is essential to understand the process so that all your questions are answered. With nearly 20 years in the mortgage industry, Lauren Levy with Polygon Financial Group has the experience to answer your questions. Lauren understands that each financial transaction is personal. If you'd like to explore your options on a reverse mortgage, remodel your home, buy a rental property, or move, call Lauren Levy at 303-880-8881. Kim Monson highly recommends Lauren Levy for all your mortgage needs. Call Lauren at 303-880-8881.
And welcome back to the Kim Monson Show. Be sure and check out our website. That is Kim Monson, MONSON.com. Sign up for our weekly email newsletter, and you can email me at kim@kimmonson.com as well. Thank you to all of you who support us. We're an independent voice. We search for truth and clarity by looking at these issues through the lens of freedom versus force versus freedom. If something's a good idea, you should not have to force people to do it. And we have pre-recorded these shows, and in the first hour, I talked with Scott Powell. He is a senior fellow at the Discovery Institute, but we were talking about Lloyd Austin and Company are slated to dismantle and take down the Monument to Reconciliation in Arlington National Cemetery. And we've got to make sure that we work to not let that happen. But right here in our backyard, we've got a memorial that we can help recognize and help raise the money for the remodel of the Marine Memorial out at 6th and Colfax. And a great way to help them is to go to usmcmemorialfoundation.org, and you can make a contribution. You can buy a brick to honor your military service. And again, all that is at usmcmemorialfoundation.org. In studio with me is my friend, Professor Kurt Gerwitz. He is a business professor, and we're talking about labor and inflation and let's talk a little bit about labor and management, because you teach an MBA course, right?
I do. I teach what I humbly call the best finance and investments class in all of Colorado. We do a deep dive on publicly traded companies that are headquartered in Colorado. I've been recently commissioned to put together the portfolio of Colorado companies. So
cool.
I've got a list of 130 companies, and there's some complexity in there. But, I like the big boys like Ball Corp, where my wife works, and Crocs is one that everybody knows. Now,
and they've had a real interesting history, haven't they? I mean, they were this big success, and then didn't the stock price go down a little bit, or what's their story?
I mean, they make a shoe for fashion. Talk about, I have this question in my heart about whether or not my interest in artificial intelligence is just a fad. Like the metaverse was such a disastrous fad. But when you're if you make clothing, if you make apparel, you're in the fad business for one. And then your signature look and texture, material is sort of like fixed and inherent to your name. That's an inherent, like if I was writing that report on Crocs, I would say, like, look, this is the big risk, is that they are this one thing. And I don't know, it's a great shoe. I like it. As in terms of fashion sense, I don't get to decide what people, what the market, what creates demand in that. I think they've done tremendous based on that limitation.
Yeah, I think almost everybody, at some point in time in their life had some Crocs. I think almost everybody.
I think of it as I don't know. I love wearing my Crocs, and you know what brought them back was everybody wants to be a platform business, right? And like the iPhone itself, it's the apps or the content. I can go and listen to the Kim Monson Show on my podcasts on my phone, but the phone itself is the platform. Well, how do Crocs become a platform? Well, they've got those little, and I don't know the name of those things, the little charms that
that's right,
that they put on them now. I have a pair of light blue Crocs, and I have a light blue Croc charm on my light blue Crocs, and it's so meta. It's hilarious.
That is. So anyway, we got sidetracked, but you're looking at all of these Colorado companies.
All the publicly traded companies that are headquartered in Colorado. And so it's the small ones that are more interesting to me. I love the idea of the Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory. We haven't covered them yet, but we've covered Riot Blockchain. They just rebranded to I'm going to get it wrong in here, so I'll skip it. We just most recently covered PCYO, which is the ticker for Pure Cycle Water, the water utility company. We covered Farmland Partners, a REIT that is paying their investors off of their farmland investments. It's a really interesting way you can own farmland in your portfolio, and we covered WOW, Wide Open West, and so we're gonna for the first time I'm gonna have to be able to talk about, because portfolio math, there's only 2 free lunches in finance. One is
I thought there was no free lunch.
Yeah, right. Well, there's the only rule that's more important than that is all the rules have a little caveat. Like, it's one of the dreaded things. My students will roll their eyes, but you ask a question in finance, and the answer is always it depends. So there are 2 free lunches in finance that I propose here. One is your 401k match.
Okay.
Right? So that's just extra money from your company. So you should absolutely be contributing up to your max. And the other free lunch is diversification reduces risk while keeping the same expected return. So diversification. So portfolio math it gets to come into my conversations now as we look at all of Colorado.
Okay. That reminds me of life isn't fair. And somebody said the only fair in life is the state fair and the county fair.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, yes. So you wanted to ask about labor and management.
Yes.
So we've got a strike happening right now in Hollywood that the writers are afraid of, and for the first time ever, we're seeing they're naming AI, and we're going to have to try to figure out. I do believe the future of AI will be. Well, there will be 2 futures of AI, and they'll both happen at the same time. The legitimate future of AI will be where things get labeled on whether they're human-produced or AI-produced, because they're going to be we believe that the technology will get to the point where they're indistinguishable, and it's going to really shake up a lot of the world. But we still want authenticity, and so we'll start labeling whether it was AI generated or not, and then that becomes a whole compliance problem. And like right now, I'll do it. I'll write you an essay, and I'll use AI as an assistant. I've told you that you do a lot of emails. You should be using AI as an assistant, and it's great for brainstorming. There's 10 use cases for ChatGPT that you're going to hear at lunch from me today.
Okay,
but and so, I think this is going to end in tears. I mean, I think these writers they're not going to have a chance against, Netflix and Disney, and the big streamers are the ones in control now. So labor and management is getting disrupted by AI.
I just kind of watched it from afar, but the writers are concerned that they basically won't be needed because of AI, and so the big guys, like of course Disney's getting smaller by the day, but Netflix. So the big guys, though, they do not want to assure the writers of their jobs, or what is the actual real question on this?
Yeah, so there's bigger issues, and this is kind of a side note, but it's like a little cancer thing where it's like, oh, this, it's not the biggest thing about your health right now, but we actually think, looking 5 years out, 10 years out, this is the most interesting small little thing. So the big thing is that the payment model for writers has changed because of streaming, and they just they want to get paid for their work. similar to the way they used to with regular TV or regular movies. They would get a piece of the action, but with streaming, they don't have visibility into what that is even. And so that's the big conversation, and they're going to lose on that. And then the side piece is where they say, we want you to say out loud, we want you to sign into paper that you won't use AI writers. Yeah, we won't have robots writing the scripts, because if you go to ChatGPT right now and say, tell me a story for my 7-year-old that it has a moral that they shouldn't punch their little sister, it will give you a good story, and there's no attribution.
What if you ask, give me a reason why I should punch my little sister? Will it give you that?
It will. Well, that's the danger of a tool. Just like money and all tools, it could be used like a hammer can build a house, or it could also hurt your family. Yeah. Yes.
So anyway, continue on. I was just being snarky.
Well, that's it. So like they're trying to corral how AI will be used in our lives and in the future. And it's a very important question, because we're going to have a weird future. I think, society in 10 years will be almost unrecognizable because of AI. I'm in the hype cycle, and I'm a little bit behind the curve, because the fear-driven stuff is, really grabbed a bunch of headlines, and there's been less interest in AI. But look, I follow my favorite professor, who's not myself, is Scott Galloway out of NYU, and he teaches marketing, and he says that the secret to knowing which trends are real or not for him was he's looking at citations or like the control F, like how often a term is used in academic papers. And if you look at social media and mobile over the past 10 years, you see this chart. But if you look at some of the fad things like 3D printing, or I mentioned the metaverse itself, and I can't think of another business fad. I get caught up in all of them, but this AI one is different, and it has the pattern of mobile and of social, which were actually so powerful and impactful.
It's absolutely fascinating. And out of this, it was creativity and innovation that got us to this point, which that inherently is, well, I think the American idea really unleashed entrepreneurship and creativity and innovation.
It's about following the incentives. It's my favorite argument against communism is from a worker saying they pretend to pay us and we pretend to work. And so when people can't if you take away the incentive for an inventor to invent, they won't invent.
And that's important to get the incentives correct. And I'm talking with Professor Kurt Gerwitz. It's Labor Day, so we're talking about labor and all kinds of different things regarding business. And we get to do this because we have sponsors like Monson Law.
A recent report notes that the number of children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder is consistently and dramatically increasing. This is heartbreaking. If your child or grandchild or someone you know has been diagnosed with autism or ADHD following exposure to Tylenol or acetaminophen during pregnancy, call Monson Law at 303-999-9999. Monson Law is a Colorado-based law firm who has been fighting Big Pharma for over 20 years. Call now at 303-999-9999 for a free, no-obligation review of your potential claim. Call now at 303-999-9999.
All of Kim's sponsors are an inclusive partnership with Kim and are not affiliated with or in partnership with KLZ or Crawford Broadcasting. If you would like to support the work of the Kim Monson Show and grow your business, contact Kim at her website, kimmonson.com. That's Kim Monson, MONSON.com.
Franktown Firearms wants you to be comfortable with your firearm purchase, so they make it easy for you. At Franktown, they know you want to try a firearm before you commit to your purchase. Franktown has a 10-lane, 30-yard range built into it that can handle handguns, rifles, and black powder loads, making your firearm purchase informed and insightful. An hour of range time is included with any purchase, so you can verify that you've made the right choice and for you to get to know your new firearm. And training courses are available to teach you safety and techniques to operate it confidently. Whether you're a first-time buyer or seasoned expert, Franktown's dedicated staff and expert trainers will walk you through your decision. They help you to try the firearm that you're interested in, ensuring that they're the right option for your specific needs. Whether you're looking for your first firearm or adding to your vast collection, contact Franktown Firearms today by going to klzradio.com/Franktown. Franktown Firearms, where friends are made.
And welcome back to the Kim Monson Show. Be sure and check out our website. That is Kim Monson, MONSON.com. Sign up for our weekly email newsletter, and you can email me at kim@kimmonson.com as well. And thank you to all of you who support us. We're an independent voice. We search for truth and clarity by looking at these issues through the lens of freedom versus force, force versus freedom. If something's a good idea, you should not have to force people to do it. And Grand Lake U.S. Constitution Week is right around the corner, September 11th through the 17th. And they have all kinds of great speakers. There will be Tom Cranowiter and Rob Nadelson, Drew Dix. And the main event on Saturday, it starts with a parade, which is a real great taste of Americana. And then there will be the main event in the park. I will be the MC. And the keynote speaker is Dr. Carol Swain. A flyover, a concert by Dot Cero. And then Saturday finishes off with fireworks over the lake. It is absolutely marvelous. And you can get more information by going to GrandLakeUSConstitutionWeek.com. That's GrandLakeUSConstitutionWeek.com. In studio with me is Kurt Gerwitz. He is a professor of finance and business here in Colorado, and a great program. I've got to think that these students learn so much from you.
Yeah, I mean, I followed up with them too. You know, it's important to me that it's a transformational experience. They learn to think like analysts. You know, analysts do make better decisions than people who have not been trained as analysts, and I'm digging into why that is. I have a lecture and or a lesson, I should say, and it should be. I should do a
show on it.
Yeah, I should do a show on it with you. Okay. It's the biases and fallacies of how the human mind thinks. And just knowing that, just being aware that most of our thinking is, well, let me say it this way. Human intellect is a social pursuit.
Really?
Yeah. And most of our thinking is actually, unfortunately, is like we're looking for reasons to confirm what we already believe. And once you know that, then you can start to apply the scientific method where, you know, double blind and having peer review or just like trying to, like what you do, like bringing people together for conversation. And even when it's adversarial, or if it's like we're dealing with election season now, and you get presidential debates, and I don't want a president who's only good at debating, but when ideas have to, in an arena, ideas have to compete with each other for, our belief system, then that's the only way to get to better answers and the truth.
Absolutely. And the idea that people don't, I call it intellectual curiosity. I'm astonished that I find that there are some people that just are not interested in really, having that conversation and really, kicking the tires on the ideas, Kurt.
There's a couple things that happens. I think with old age we see the plasticity of the brain, getting reduced, but with exercise and with the intention that we can. I grew up thinking that it's so much easier to learn a language as a child because your brain is more ready for it. And someone disproved that recently and said, no, it's just that you spend more time on it. It's really just time on task to learn a thing. And yeah, it can be done. I love what you're doing here about, personal empowerment and personal responsibility, because it is the answer to all of our problems.
It really is. And the American idea was really founded upon the sanctity of the individual, and I think that's what has made us so unique, because we got the incentives right. And the incentives was liberty, and liberty is the responsible exercise of freedom. And it is astonishing. People can come to America with nothing, and they can create something. They can create something for themselves and their families. But it takes hard work.
And the other side of that coin, and you're not going to like this side as much, I don't think, is that no one ever did it alone. No, I really enjoyed Arnold Schwarzenegger's, his documentary on Netflix, and he puts it out for himself, so it puts him in a positive light. And he gets to the end and he goes, people think, I'm the perfect example of a self-made man. And if you see his determination and his vision and his persistence and his efforts, his actions that he puts into his work, it's very inspiring. And you think, what a great man. And he says at the end, he goes, I couldn't have done it without the people around me. I argue that you are the average of the 12 people you spend the most time with. And I think there's data on that your income or your net worth is the average of the 12 people you spend the most time with. So and no one came to this country and did it on their own without the help of others, or without we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. We're all just cavemen without those who came before us. And so the other side of the individualism is the communalism, and it is equally important. I just think when the chips are down, the greatest motivator in human history, and the one that capitalism taps into for productivity and for creativity, is that individual selfish self-interest. And I think I'd like to, we think about, we want to move past that, we want to grow past that. I do believe that. But when it comes down to it, more often than not, when we see institutions trying to do things for the common good, you just got to go. It's suspicious. It needs to be questioned. It needs to be challenged.
Absolutely. And so there are, and I will agree, there certainly is community in all of this as well. But it's the individual, and then we come together as parts of the community. The other side of community, if that is put first, community, communism, all those things have something in common. And so it doesn't value the individual. It values the community. There's no way the community can care about the individual the way the individual cares about him or herself.
Yeah, because they're closest to the information. And that speaks to the labor management conversation perhaps a little bit. One of my favorite stories is the Chinese, in the 1980s, this one village. Have I already told this story on air? I don't remember. I'll tell it real quick. That this one village, and it has a communist rep who's in the village, but they're far enough away, and China's kind of getting a little desperate. And they were kind of getting a little open-minded, if you will. That was their out of desperation. That's what they were doing. And so this village said, "We're going to let you keep." As an individual, let you keep, or as a family, right? Let you keep whatever you produce over quota. And this is a village that's not hitting quota. They're not producing quota. And then so they knew that what they did, like the signers of our, the Declaration of Independence, like John Hancock's name is so popular because he wrote it so big, because he was unafraid. Whereas, a lot of our writers for the Federalist Papers and these controversial, what would be labeled terrorism today, ideas against the British, that they, they had to go anonymous because they were scared of death. And so these Chinese people were thinking that they would be killed for saying this is a capitalist idea, that like a private property ownership protection that they were writing for themselves into some little village. And the next morning they said they saw that their neighbors were out in the fields a lot earlier actually, like an hour earlier than usual. And so that village then actually, like, the communists let it happen, and good for them for doing that. That village then shot over their quota, right, and became the model. And this is when communism started to accept, or they're doing a different thing. They want to be communist in government and capitalist in the economy. But this is why, and it works, and it's not necessarily elegant or beautiful, or it doesn't feel loving, but it actually produces the things that we need to give each other love.
And you're saying getting the incentives right, where the people then were able to keep more of the fruits of their labor. So because of that, they decided to labor more. Yes?
Exactly, yes. They could tie their actions to the rewards that they could have, as opposed to tying, the alternative is tying their actions to, I get nothing, like right. Taking away people's incentives to work. I'm worried about that. I'm also worried about the opposite side of that, is when we get Oh shoot, I'm losing my train of thought here. Sorry.
Well, we're just about out of time,
Good.
so
Perfect
let's go ahead and wrap it up. We've got a little over a minute. So, what would you like to finish this up with regarding Labor Day?
You know, I always want to end on a positive note, and because sometimes I get, when I hang out with my conservative friends, I feel some dread or fear of the future, and some of that is healthy, but the answer is always in our spirituality, and the Serenity Prayer is some of the world's greatest wisdom. So we face challenges, but what is it that I can do and give me the courage to take action as an individual for my community? Wraps it all up.
Well, Kurt Gerwitz, it's always great. Oh, and one other thing, just very quickly, you've got a statistics class.
Oh, yes. This upcoming Saturday, September 9th, it's 9 a.m. in the morning. Find me on the internet. You can find me through the Kim Monson Show. Or you just Google my name, Kurt Gerwitz, and you can find my name on the Kim Monson website. Okay.
And that is Kurt with a K. And so I did go to Milton Friedman for a quote. He said, "The essential notion of a capitalist society is voluntary cooperation and voluntary exchange. The essential notion of a socialist society is force." So, my friends, today be grateful, read great books, think good thoughts, listen to beautiful music, communicate and listen well, live honestly and authentically, strive for high ideals, and like Superman, stand for truth, justice, and the American way. My friends, you are not alone. God bless you, and God bless America.
And I don't want no one to cry, but tell them if I don't survive, I was born free. I was born free. I was born free.
The views and opinions expressed on KLZ 560 are those of the speaker, commentators, hosts, their guests, and callers. They are not necessarily the views and opinions of Crawford Broadcasting or KLZ management, employees, associates, or advertisers. KLZ 560 is a Crawford Broadcasting God and Country station.